Hey Amarillo, I'm Jason Boyett, and you're listening to Hey Amarillo, the interview podcast featuring some of the most interesting people and stories of Amarillo, Texas. As part of this podcast partnership with Brick & Elm Magazine, I want to give a podcast shout-out to Advanced Dentistry of Amarillo, Amarillo Botanical Gardens, Selena Fogg, CPA, and Wealth Management at First Bank Southwest. The January-February issue of Brick & Elm features the amazing winners of our first ever Brickley Awards, and as a reminder, you're invited to an awards ceremony event celebrating these recipients on February 4th. You can get those tickets at brickandelm.com. I would love to see you there. Today's guest is Chris Griffin. And Chris and his wife, Donna, are the owners and operators of Blue Crane Bakery on 6th Street, and they were selected as the Entrepreneurs of the Year in Brick & Elm's recent Brickley Awards. And Chris has a really interesting story. Long before he was baking for a living, he was living it up in the nightclub and music scene in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. And then he was a motorcycle mechanic. And then he worked in the wind turbine industry. And if you're wondering how somebody with that kind of background ended up making really amazing vegan and gluten-free items in a small batch bakery on Route 66, well, that's why this podcast exists. Here's Chris Griffin. Chris Griffin, welcome to the Hey Amarillo podcast. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It's a great honor.
Well, I'm honored to have you here. I am eager to hear more about your story. And so I want to start with you the same way I start with all my guests. And that's just to ask you why you're here. So what brought you to Amarillo in the first place?
That's a good question. I'm originally from Fort Worth, actually a little town called Haltom City right outside of Fort Worth.
Okay.
I met my wife, Donna, 20 years ago. 21, somewhere around there. It's been a ride, and it doesn't seem like it's been that long. So I tell everybody, if they want to hear it or not, I wasn't born in Amarillo, but I surely got here as quickly as I could. And I just love Amarillo.
Did you go to like high school in Haltom City?
I went to Haltom High.
Okay.
To much of their dismay, I did graduate. It took me a couple times, but graduated in 85. My first real job was Budweiser Beers, Benny Keith distributor. I was a keg guy, about 19, and it taught me the ins and outs of life.
There in the Metroplex area?
In Fort Worth,
okay.
Yes. I met my wife, and I was currently in the nightclub business, and she persuaded me to move to Amarillo. And it didn't take much persuasion. It's unique. I had everything I needed in Fort Worth, or I thought at the time I did. And she's like, well, why don't you come up to Amarillo? It's very windy, it smells a lot, and you won't have the comforts of home, but me. And there again, it didn't take much persuasion. And I moved up here, and we've been flourishing, if you will, ever since.
What year did you move here?
I moved here, almost 2005.
Okay.
And my parents didn't understand. I don't think a lot of people understood. I was also a motorcycle mechanic, and I lived that lifestyle. So I had a lot of friends that I hung out with. I shouldn't say for better or worse, but we lived that lifestyle. And for me to just uproot and move to Amarillo was crazy in some respect for a lot of people. And my parents understood. They knew that I needed to change my life, but they didn't know what that entailed with me moving here. I packed a U-Haul one day, and Donna came out to meet me. And off we go down 287. Mm-hmm. And that was probably my only third time to go down 287.
Really?
I've been down that 287 a lot more
Even
than
as a
now.
motorcycle guy, you hadn't come this direction.
I never came this direction. My sister, Jenny, lives here, and I came up with my parents in the mid-90s. And I remember it being so different from what it is now. Mm-hmm. Now, having said, that was a good close to 30 years ago when I came up with my parents to see my sister. 20 years down the road, when I moved here, it's a lot different now than it was then.
Yeah.
And I think that is a positive turn. Amarillo, I understand I'm still a rookie. I remember asking my wife, is it always windy here? And I remember she had a little sigh on her face, like, oh my gosh, if the wind is going to be the deal breaker, I must lie at this time. But she didn't. it's been quite a journey up to this point, and I suck every minute of it up.
Okay, so I want to hear a little bit about your career there in Fort Worth.
Sure.
Because you've already mentioned motorcycle mechanic, you've mentioned working for Bud, you've mentioned nightclubs.
Yes.
Is that part of a plan? Is that kind of things you just fell into? Like, did you know what you wanted to do with your life when you were in high school?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I still at this time wonder what the next day brings. Jokingly, of course. But, I fell into the beer industry. My grandfather was from St. Louis. So he had friends at Budweiser, Anheuser-Busch Budweiser, in St. Louis, Missouri. Well, I get a call. Would you like to work here? And I did. I was there about 3.5 years, and it feels like an eternity when you're at that age. But it was nothing planned. So I had a couple accidents with the company. And back then, you could probably have up to 2 or 3 incidents in a truck and go back to work.
Yeah, because you're out delivering stuff in all the crazy driving of Metroplex.
And I was at working nights. My one particular area was north side of Fort Worth, and that contained the stockyards. So I was the bud man in the stockyards. And I just thought it was the great thing ever. And if you ask my wife to this day, I know she's smiling right now when she hears this podcast, because I talk a lot about that job, because it was a coming of age kind of thing. It was my first real big boy job, so to speak. So I had a third accident with that company, and the insurance released me. Said, okay, it's enough. I had a hard time finding my way after that. I was making more money than my mother was at the time, and she was a paralegal at a prominent attorney's office in Fort Worth. So I lost the income. So I didn't know what I was going to do. So I had a few jobs here and there, and it never worked out because I was comparing things to my previous career. So that went on for, it seemed like, a good while. In reality, it was probably 2 years. And then I got a position. I was drowning my sorrows in the stockyards of Fort Worth. My roommate at the time, his name is Michael Franklin, just a great friend of mine. Well, I was going up there and having alcohol and just thinking the world's coming to an end.
Yeah.
Well, somehow or another, I became a DJ at a place called the Cadillac Cantina. It's still there to this day. The building's 140 years old. It recently burned a few years back, and they built it back up. So it got me in the door.
Just because you were a regular there?
Yeah.
And they said,
it's like, hey, I need a DJ up here. Can you put records? And there was records at the time.
Yeah.
Can you put a record on the turntable and not talk too much? Well, as is anybody that knows me, not talking too much is a challenge.
Yeah, that was the hardest part of the
job. Oh, yeah. So I did that for a while, and then I had another opportunity, another nightclub. And I started DJing, and I quickly just really got attached to it and became an entertainment director. And I was probably 23 or 24. And that job, that line of work, went through off and on 18 years. I would go through it for quite a while, and then I would step out. I'd say probably in 97, 98, I was done with the nightclub scene, if you will. I was in Dallas. I was making wrong choices. I was living life very fast, multiple cars, the whole bit. It was just totally irresponsible.
Entertainment director, like you were bringing bands into these nightclubs or musical acts, like what?
Yes. So I was bringing music in, and I was also playing music.
Okay.
So entertainment director is a very loose term. Where I was at, I ended up getting back out. So that's when the motorcycle thing came into play. 1998, not 97, I went to Phoenix, Arizona to become a motorcycle mechanic, just on a whim. I didn't know why I wanted to do it. I'd had motorcycles in my background. My dad, he's a retired cop, but he's been riding motorcycles every day of his life, motorcycle escorts for funerals, stuff like that. So it was in my blood, right? I knew I needed to do something else because I couldn't go on the path that I was going much longer. I was getting caught up with excess and just the whole thing. So I went to Phoenix to Motorcycle Mechanics Institute. So I think I was there for a year and 2 months. I want to think for a good 5 to 6 months, I was just drying out. It came to reality that I'm in Arizona and I'm by myself, and I had friends that I met. So long story short, I got my degrees in Harley Davidson, which there are technically a thing.
Yeah.
And I got out of school and went right back to Fort Worth and worked at a dealership, Harley Davidson dealership, for a couple years. It became like, it was very sterile. We were listening to Madonna and Prince all day long on the pop stations. It was very out of character, but
it doesn't seem like a real Harley sort of.
It's like, this you need to move your toolbox so we can polish the floor here in a little while. That actually happened, but it was a good eye opener of what I signed up for. Mm-hmm. So I was there for a couple of years, and then I realized I'm tired of changing tires and electrical components. I want to do something else, but in the same industry. So I got a job at a place called American Iron Horse Motorcycles. And that was right around 2000, where the big chopper scene was coming out of California, with Mr. Jesse James steering the helm on that, And I worked there for a few years and got a lot of experience, and I was good at it. I liked what I did. I worked there for about 4 years, and then my old past came back and knocked on the door again. So I went back to the nightclub. I was just totally burned out of the motorcycle thing, and I wasn't making much money. It's a glamorous kind of thing in a way, but the money's not really there unless you own your own gig and stuff like that. So I went back to the club. That was about 2002, almost into 03, and my old demons started haunting me again. And this time,
you were back in the environment.
I was back in the environment.
Easy, right?
Yes. And I was working for a local band, a very famous band, and they owned half the club.
What was that band?
The band was called Pantera.
Okay.
And
people will have heard of them.
Absolutely. So, funny story, me and Dimebag, Daryl, Rex, and Vinny, we were all pretty good friends. It just so happened that we were in the right time, and we all lived close by. They'd play this old little place called Joe's Garage. Oh my God. It was a cool club because there was a lot of people going in and out of there, a lot of really up and coming. I seen Metallica in there, and they were barely signed, and they were just walking around the club watching the guys play. So anyway, years go down the road, and they buy half of a nightclub, and I started working for them. And it was, I'm glad I'm still alive. But it's weird how fate works. It's weird how the good Lord works, because I work in the club scene again, making a lot of money and doing the whole thing again. And I meet my wife, Donna.
Okay.
And I meet her online, and it was MySpace. It wasn't Facebook at the time. I didn't.
So she was living in Amarillo.
She was living here. Yeah. I met her on a website called, it was rockerlove.com.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
It's like farmersonly.com, but for what you were doing, right?
So you couldn't put it any better. That's exactly what it was. So I met her, and we're getting along quite well and talking. We hadn't met each other face to face yet. And she goes, one day she pops up and goes, "Hey, funny story." As people can't see right now, I'm heavily tattooed. I can cover up quite well. But she proceeds to says, "Funny story, my husband tattooed the whole left side of your body." Okay. We took a right turn, but we're still going forward. And come to find out, it was my tattoo artist's ex-wife.
Okay.
And it's funny how that goes. We proceeded to keep talking. And I had started having enough of the club, seeing I was partially living in Deep Ellum at the time. So I think when she proceeded to tell me, "Okay, it's time to go, Chris," and I'm like, "Okay, yeah," and that's where that lies into, people didn't understand why I was leaving. It was something else that was pulling me to Amarillo, and that's the fate. That's our lives, me and my wife and my kids. That they're around us, we're around them. Our life with our children and our grandkids now just circle our lives, and we wouldn't have it any other way.
There's a lot of stories about, and this is a contemporary thing, about how relationships, especially with young men who kind of don't know what they're doing, don't have a purpose, that can give them the right kind of stability, kind of help them figure out, okay, this is what I need to do. I need to work on behalf of my family. I need to have a plan. Like getting involved with her, moving to Amarillo, leaving behind a lot of those bad influences, like it kind of gave you the stability that you'd been chasing after. Is that accurate?
I think that's very accurate. Now, I would have friends come up here from time to time, and they would pop up like, "Where'd you go? I'm here now. Let's go ride our motorcycles and be irresponsible in Amarillo." And that finally, that kind of dissipated. And it was it was something else calling, saying, okay, we need to progress in life. This is your past. To tell people my previous life, as far as being almost a rock star in my own right, to everything that we did. I lived on a boat in my early 20s on Lake Eagle Mountain. I had a condo, a boat, 3 cars. I progressed, and I didn't realize what I needed, what Amarillo and my family was able to give me.
Okay.
So my father and me, it's complicated. Let's say that. My mother raised me in Fort Worth, late 60s, early 70s, in the south side of Fort Worth, where it was not very safe for a single woman to do that. So he was there here and there, and it's been like that our whole lives. And that is what it is. We tried to reconcile when my young son Jude was born. He's now 12. It just didn't seem to work out for one reason or another. So I guess what I'm getting at is I came here with a lot of support and never knew it. That being said, my father-in-law, his name's Michael Sandorsky, my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, my mother-in-law, Kathy Sandorsky, were right there to pick up another deal of support that I didn't know I needed.
Okay.
Of course, my parents are back home in Fort Worth, Colleyville, actually, and they had recently just now moved here to Amarillo.
Okay.
I'm so excited and blessed to have my parents here. I could blubber like a baby almost right now to tell you how excited I am for, everything to come into play, and now we're all here. So I didn't know the stability that I needed until I needed it and got it.
Yeah. Okay. So people who know you have still not heard anything about baking, as you're talking about your career.
Yes.
So people who know you now probably know you from Blue Crane. Tell me how that happened, because you came here, you were still repairing motorcycles.
Yes. So I got here and I didn't know what to do. I had a job lined up and it fell through. Well, I had to find another job pretty quick because my money and my savings were depleting quick. I found a job with motorcycle department, a motorcycle shop in town, Bo Pearson. He is a minister at Hardcore Motorcycle Group Ministries. They have a place right off of Nelson and 10th, I believe. Anyway, Bo gave me a chance. He saw something that I didn't even really see myself. So I went working for him. And it's just such a great man. Bo and Debbie are incredible people. He's still a motorcycle mechanic here and there, but it wasn't paying the bills as much as we'd like. I had to leave. I didn't want to leave. He didn't want me to leave. So someone said, there's a place out next to Pampa, close to Pampa, called National Oil Well Varco, and they're looking for welders. You can weld, right? Oh, yeah. I've been welding for years, which wasn't the case, but I'd had welding in my background, or so I thought. So I went to National Oil Well. They hired me. I had to take a welding test, which I'm sure I flunked at the time. But the guy that was testing me had a couple motorcycles he needed repaired. This may or may not be true. That's what I had heard. I never saw a motorcycle. To be on his side, that never came about, but they gave me a chance. And we were building mobile oil rigs. And I started there 05, probably, 06 maybe. Well, I excelled in it. And my demeanor, I've never really met anybody I really didn't like. Mm-hmm. Always there to help. It's just how my mother raised me. Help as much as you can, and if you can't help, find out why. So I was there working on mobile oil rigs. That went for 10 or 11 years. I start seeing all these wind turbines popping up there all over town. My wife, there is a new program at Amarillo College, renewable energy. I think you should take it. I thought she was out of her mind. I'm like, I don't know about that. I think I could do it, but I'm not sure. So I was welding at National Oil all day. Then I'd go to school at night.
Okay.
I got an advanced certificate. I was going for associates, but I didn't have that patience. And I have adult ADD, which is unmedicated because I don't like that stuff. And so it was hard to keep my attention on anything. So I got out of the program and went right back to National Oil because the turbines weren't in town. So I had an old car I sold to a friend of mine. And he's like, I'm going to work for this turbine outfit in town. They're putting turbines all over the place called Vestas Americas. I'm like, you know what? I think I have a certificate for that. I forgot about that. So lo and behold, I get a job at Vestas Americas. I think they hired me. I was probably 48 at the time, 48, 49. They hired me because I had a lot of experience on mechanical stuff, with motorcycles, with hydraulics, with welding. But I also had a way and a knack to be able to keep everybody in check without being non-polite. So there's a lot of kids in that industry. So I think I got hired a lot to
as the mature guy.
I can't say this, but I'm going to say this. I still have a lot of friends out there that are in that industry, and I think I got hired to keep everybody in check. I don't want to say kids because they were early 20s, but they were great men in their own right, and still most of them are in that industry today. So I go a year into that industry and have a heart scare. I have a health scare. I was having problems eating on lunch break, 300 feet in the air. I'd feel something in my throat, tickle my throat. It was my aortic valve. I went to two of the best things I ever did in my life is I told my mother about it, and I told my wife, Donna, about it. And it's like, okay, you got to stop. Let's go to the cardiologist. I'm like, I don't think so. I think it's going to be okay. Sure enough, long story short, it wasn't okay.
And it was just a tickle in your throat. Like it wasn't
it wasn't
pain in your left arm or shortness of breath, any of that kind of stuff?
Absolutely not. It was nothing that you would think, my leg's going numb. It was none of that. It was just something that felt when I ate. One test came more and more important than the other, sense of urgency, if you will, over my cardiologist. And long story short, I'm in Dallas, Baylor, Dallas, getting open heart surgery 7 years ago. So I get cleared. They clear me. Come back home. You're clear. Insurance says you can climb up that tower. You're good to go. Well, no, I'm not. So I went back. I resigned from Vestas, which in hindsight was a mistake, because I went back to National Oil and they're on decline. They were selling that company in Pampa. They're from Houston. I got released from that job. But what I did was 2 months before I was released, Donna came up to me and goes, Chris, I think we need to open up a bakery. Like, I don't know. What? I mean, I know how to cook. I know how to bake. We all learned how to bake as kids in our family. But I didn't know if I'd do it. I never thought about it as a job.
And she had a bit of an entrepreneurial background too, right?
Yes.
So
she does. And we have a salon right next to the bakery. She's been a hairdresser for almost 30 years. She's had the salon for a good 15 or 16 years. 2 historic places on 6th Street that we love so dearly. And we got a new mural from Blank Spaces not too long ago, and those people are incredible.
Why did she think baking, though? Like where did that come from?
That's a good question. She's all like, we need to open up a bakery. There's not a bakery on 6th Street. We have this other property that just came available since we had them. We've had them now for 15 years, but up to that point, it was the Roseberry, which Dirk and David are good friends of ours that are now down the street. Before that, it was Kelly Fink's private tattoo studio, and she's passed, unfortunately, a few years back. So this little building has been everything, and I mean everything. So she's like, we have all these family recipes. I have my mother-in-law's family's recipes. We have our own. Let's do it. And I'm thinking about it, and And just like everything else in my life, now that I think about it, it's like, well, okay, let's do that. I don't know if I'll be any good at it. I love to bake. I love to cook for us, but I don't know if we can pull it off, so to speak. And she's like, well, let's just trust it. Everything has kind of the stars have aligned all these years. Let's just try it. And we did. So.
And you guys started like out of the gate. You weren't just trying to be like every other bakery. I mean, because
correct.
You focused on sugar-free baking or gluten-free because your diet had changed as a result of your health scare or the recovery from it. I mean, was that part of the?
Well, my diet should have changed.
Okay.
So
it was.
It took a while and years to go by. Now I'll be 58 in March, and my youngest is 12. The blessing of my life, but still, all that didn't. I was so hard-headed that it didn't make a difference, through the years. But we started up, and it's kind of funny, how you get those pictures on Facebook of the timeline stuff.
Yeah.
I'd got one a while back, and it was the first day that we were open, and we had like 4 items in our cooler section, which is now, 7 or 8, of course. We had sugar-free and gluten-free, but we didn't have vegan gluten-free at the time. So it was very sporadic. We had a couple trays of the same item, and the cookies on the other side were the same way. So we didn't know really how it was going to go. It took a while. It didn't take a while to really get it off the ground. It seemed to go off effortlessly there right off the bat. So, okay, here we go. We had other bakeries that were coming in, checking things out, and we had a lot of the neighbors in San Jacinto area coming through. And that's a big thing to this day about San Jacinto neighborhood. It's so incredible, and there's so many good people in that little community. It predates Amarillo itself.
Yeah.
We're a block off of 7th Street where the trolley train had its stopping point, and they turned around and went back to downtown area. So we found out what worked, what didn't work, what we needed to do, how we needed to do it. And that was kind of bumps and scrapes along the way, too. The word got out we were doing, what we were thinking was, okay, we're doing keto items. Anybody on the keto diet, come on in. We have sugar-free, gluten-free.
Because that was back when that diet was really starting to blow up. I mean, people were talking about that.
Absolutely. And I had no idea in my head, and I'll admit this, that I didn't consider diabetics. I wasn't a diabetic. Nobody in my family was diabetic. And it took a couple people to really come in and say, hey, I don't care about this keto thing. I need it for my overall health and longevity because we're getting left out of the party, so to speak. And then we had kids come in. I remember a couple little twin girls came in one time, and they were looking for a cupcake because they had never had one. And they were going to a party. They had heard that we had keto. And that week we had just happened to have cupcakes. And, they started crying. Well, I started crying.
Because finally they had something they could eat.
They had something. And then I'm like, oh, wait a minute. That's really what's important to me, is to help people out. We're not solving anything miraculously or nothing like that, but we're able to let people enjoy their lives along with others. And then we added vegan gluten-free. And we're starting to get a lot of people in this town. A lot of people are becoming celiac. Gluten issues, dairy issues are a big thing now. We have more people come in now for vegan gluten-free than we do sugar-free. But it's still all in thirds, so it all kind of balances out quite well. It's just been going, and we just do what we do.
One of the things I hear from bakers, and this may just be somebody at home, is that it's hard to replicate the taste of a traditionally baked cookie if you're trying to make it gluten-free, if you're trying to make it sugar-free, if you're trying to, to meet these different dietary needs, that there's a lot of problem solving in that.
Yes.
And I people who think, well, it's strange that this guy who was a motorcycle mechanic is now baking, these things. But there's a similar problem solving. You've got all the parts, but you've got to make them work together. Does that feel accurate to you as a way to describe it?
That's very accurate. one of my running jokes in the bakery is like, I really got tired of welding for a living. I loved it, but you know what? I sure got tired of burning myself for a living. So now I burn myself for a living still, so it's different. And I have a lot of people that come in and ask, man, was your old life. You're baking now. What's that all about? Well, I really can't tell you. It was a calling, and it seems to be working just great. As far as replicating like a standard chocolate chip cookie, vegan, gluten-free with no dairy, no eggs, no butter, no dyes.
That's all the good stuff, right?
Yeah, as some would say. And my stepson Nigel McKinley is just, I met him when he was 9 years. Oh no, I met him when he was 6 years old, and he just turned 26. And he's one of my rocks, man. He's there baking with me every day. He does all the vegan, gluten-free. We share responsibilities half and half on the sugar-free, gluten-free, and I do all the regular traditional sugar and flour. And he is so spot on what he does. He's on the spectrum a little bit, a little autism going on, but I think that is in his favor because he makes things so incredible. And people just come in and just cannot seem to have enough of his oatmeal cream pies or the streusel bar. It's just, people come in and they don't see it in the window. Their face goes down because they're really expecting, those treats, and they impact them on that level. And Nigel's like, oh, I'll just make another one. Yeah, sure. Yeah, but what he does is so incredible. And to replicate taste, and the recipes are pretty down. All our sugar-free is not our family recipes. We got them online, just a lot of sugar-free bakeries do.
Sure.
And we tweak it. The same with vegan. Now, so there's some vegan stuff that is family, but we, instead of using butter, you use plant butter. It's a different texture, but yada, yada. The chemistry, it's all still there. So we're able and lucky to be able to replicate that, and people just love it.
I want to ask to close out this section. Blue Crane has been recognized in the Brickley Awards for your entrepreneurism, for the way that you serve the community, not just with food, but like just community involvement, all that stuff. You're very involved in the San Jacinto neighborhood. I wonder if you look back at where you were in the 90s, what you're doing, and then think of where you are now and the work that you're doing, in the neighborhood on 6th Street at Blue Crane. Like, does it feel like a surprise to you, or does it feel like maybe the culmination of a lot of things?
That's a good question. When I was in my earlier days, I thought I had what I needed. I mean, it was on top of the world, is what I thought. Trips, let's go on trips. Let's go snowboarding. Let's go Hawaii, whatever. Let's buy another car. All this material stuff that just thought that's what it was about. And now, looking back years later now, decades later, that what we do, me and my wife, my son, my daughter too, Tabitha, what we do on 6th Street is so much more important and fulfilling than anything I ever done before. Absolutely. I don't say no. Mm-hmm. We have a growing homeless problem in town. And there's a lot of great organizations that are helping them out. But I can't turn anybody away, man. Yeah. I save everything and I give it all away. Stuff that we can't sell. This last cold snap, I had an extra sleeping bag. Me and my young son are avid Boy Scouters. We are in Troop 80, the oldest troop in town. So we had extra camping gear, and I knew this guy was walking around and he hardly had a jacket. So I gave him a jacket and a sleeping bag and gave him the Coming Home program number. Mm-hmm. I've been able to help a couple guys off the street. I don't tell that to too many people because I don't want to say, well, look at me, what I do, because I don't do it for that. One thing I do and have done since day one is I had a lot of kids coming around, and some kids with no shoes, some kids runny noses, dirty clothes, and for one reason or another, that's their own family journey. But they were coming around, and I knew they were hungry. Okay, well, I got cookies. But I soon found out that they were coming around a lot. So I came up with this thing. It's like, okay, every month when you get your progress report, or your report card, you come see me. And if it's good enough, or if I think it's good enough, here Mr. Tough Guy talking, and I always give in, I'll give you a few cookies for good grades. And that kind of took off. Now, I don't tell too many people about that. Now I'm on podcasts.
Yeah, I was going to say, people will hear it
everybody's going to know, and that's okay. And I have a lot of local kids that come around and let me know that they're doing good. And a lot of they write me a lot of thank you cards and Christmas cards, and that's important. And I never really understood. I never really gave it much thought as far as notoriety or anything like that. That's whatever to me. But it was helping them out, and then people were noticing. So Sam Houston comes knocking. Sam Houston Middle School. Mm-hmm. The principal comes and sees me. Says, "Hey, we hear that there are kids coming to the bakery with good report cards. And some of these kids have been problem kids, and their grades are coming up. And it seems like they're it gave them a pep in their step." That's really that's awesome. That's an incredible thing that may or may not be happening. I think it is. I don't go in depth on that because I'll see kids and then I won't. So I think they start falling off on their grades and I'm not going to come around, but then they do anyway. But they asked me, it's like, "Hey, well, we have this a community board. Would you like to be a part of it? We have heard that you care about San Jacinto, not just the kids, but you care about the neighborhood so much. We would like to invite you on this community board and see what you think. We can pass ideas around what might be able to help, what improvements might need. Would you be interested?" Absolutely. It was such an honor for someone to come up and say, "Hey," because I'm just a cookie guy. I make brownies and I make smiles and an occasional Pop-Tart. But for someone to take notice, like, "Look, you have something going on here and we'd like you to be part of, we would want your input on a few items." So it's so incredible. It was out of the blue. And to think about it now of just how it's all gone, like you said, it's like my life before all this, my life now, it's a blessing.
This episode of Hey Amarillo is supported by Lazy Boy Home Furnishings here in Amarillo. And you probably know Lazy Boy is a national brand. You know about the recliners. But its Amarillo store is independently owned and operated by the Hawkins family, and they live here in town. And this store offers a lot more than just recliners. Amarillo's locally owned Lazy Boy Home Furnishings has a ton of products in stock. They're ready to take home or deliver today. So go visit the Lazy Boy of Amarillo showroom today at 3636 Soncy. That's 3636 Soncy. Okay, I'm back with Chris Griffin. Chris, this is the part of the show I call 8 Straight. 8 Straight is sponsored every week by Panhandle Plains Historical Museum and Canyon. It's the largest history museum in Texas, and its collection includes the Panhandle Petroleum story, which applies to a little bit of your history.
Yeah.
It's a huge exhibit about the discovery of oil in the Texas Panhandle in the 1920s and how oil exploration and the industry transformed life in this region.
We're avid members.
Yeah, are you?
Yes. Theodore Roosevelt's personal shotgun is on display. My young son Jude, that's one of his favorite things to look at. He's an avid gun enthusiast, I guess, if you will. But that's an important, special museum, especially Pioneer City of all things. Yeah. It's great.
Yeah, there's so many different things there. So you can see the petroleum exhibit and learn more at panhandleplains.org. Okay, first question. This is one that I ask all my guests. When you think of Amarillo 10 years from now, what do you hope for?
It's flourishing, and it is flourishing at a rate that is not alarming, but it's surprising. You can see it in the roadways as far as traffic goes. We're getting more services. And I'd like to, hopefully in 10 years we see more of that. Towns keeps going west of Soncy, and God bless that. More goods and services. I know my wife is waiting anxiously for an HEB grocery store. A lot
of people. Yep.
And just overall growth and patience and understanding. That's for sure.
Yeah, I hear that. Okay, other than wind, what does this area have too much of?
I know this has probably been addressed before, and I'm not sure if it has or not, but it sure seems like we have a lot of coffee. And I love coffee, and there's a lot of coffee shops.
Yeah.
and a lot of car lots, a lot of coffee, banks we need. Just put that out there. We're avid Amarillo National here. It almost seems like we almost have too many food trucks. Dare I say that?
That is, yeah, you're the first person to say that.
There's a lot.
Because we did not have hardly any for years.
Correct.
Until the city made the regulations work.
Right.
And now, like, I keep seeing, I feel like I'm on top of it.
Right.
And I keep seeing new food trucks. I'm like, I've never seen that before.
So one thing quickly is I'll say is me and my brother, Kurt's been gone for a good while. I bet he passed a good 18 years ago. And we were baseball fanatics as kids. We played baseball. That was our jam. And to have Hodgetown in Amarillo is incredible. We threw out the first pitch at a Hodgetown game. It was this summer.
Okay.
They were supporting, highlighting small businesses, and here we are, Blue Crane on the big screen. And I made it across the plate.
That's all you can ask for.
But the good thing about Hodgetown is, we can get in our seats in 20 minutes from the house.
Yep.
And we can get back home in 10. And you can't do that at a Rangers game back home in Fort Worth, Arlington. But growth is good, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the future holds.
Okay. What does this area not have enough of?
At the moment, it almost seems like patience. It seems like and the world's crazy. Since COVID and through COVID, that was another interesting part of the bakery, as it was for a lot of businesses. But as far as what we don't have enough of, that's a good question. I think we have everything we need.
Okay.
What we want, as they say, is another issue. But as far as what we need, it seems like we're getting more health services for mentally challenged or mental disorder. That seems to be on the rise. We probably need a little more of that.
Yeah.
As far as, there's a lot of kids out there. There's a lot of kids that need help. And luckily for us, that's coming up as well.
Okay. You mentioned coffee.
Yes.
What's your favorite local coffee shop?
It'd be 806.
All right. Right there on 6th Street.
Jason and Courtney down there own it. We get our coffee from them. That's not the reason it's my favorite. I love it that we can all get together on 6th Street for our own, if we have street parties, if we have street events, pop-ups, what have you, that we can all get together. They know they can come to me for gift certificates. I know I can go to them for the same. It's us getting together in time of need or not, but just all us being as a group on our own little street.
Right. And it's another business that really invests in that neighborhood.
Yes, they do Creepy Crawl every year, and that's a huge thing. I think they went through, there's no telling how many bags of candy they went through. Courtney and I were talking about that not too long ago. It was crazy. I send a lot of people there.
Yeah.
We have a lot of out-of-towners. I never really realized how many European and Asian travelers we have that come through
Until
Amarillo.
you were on 6th Street.
Until we're on 6th Street. And I send a lot of people down there for cappuccinos and some stuff I may or may not do. And if they need a good burger, I always send them to the Golden Light. There's a plug right there.
Other than, so let's move to the next question. Other than Blue Crane, what's your favorite local restaurant?
That's a good question, too. We have several. As you can tell by my protruding belly, we like to eat a lot. But
less so than it used to be, though, right?
Yes. Well,
pre-heart attack, or
absolutely.
Yeah.
Or we would like to think so. We like El Daco's a lot. It's a little Mexican food place, mom and pop without the pop.
Right down the street.
It's mom and her daughter, and it's right down the street from us. The Berceros family, they have several restaurants in town. El Tapatio, let me tell you about that. They have a place on 34th and Coulter, and one on Jim Lake. And you can go there for the best breakfast in town. My gosh. And they're good family people. Sushi, that's a whole, we go to Young's. We like going down to Young's and Valor, for Italian. So it depends on where we're at.
Okay.
Now, if it's barbecue, and I'll make this statement right now, it's Tyler's all the way.
Okay.
Ranked 5 in the country and just happens to be here in Amarillo. He's an incredible guy. He puts out barbecue like you would not believe. Tyler's is the best. Let me say that. Mitch's Barbecue, toot and totem. Surprisingly, incredibly awesome. Yes, it's great. We eat there a lot too because it's close to the house, but it's really good. And Soulmate Kitchen is a food truck. And Soulmate, if you're listening, I love y'all. You know I do, because I call every once in a while for the spicy pork. And it's just incredible.
Okay, what's your favorite local nonprofit?
CASA really comes to mind. CASA, Amarillo Angel. Amarillo Angel deals with foster, and CASA deals with children. And I cannot think of a more incredible way to go through life is to help kids. CASA, we're doing something with them, not end of the month, a giveaway for them. So I'm making a lot of treats for them. They're having an open house, I believe. But if it's not that, it's Golden Spread, Boy Scouts of America. Like I said before, we're Boy Scouts ourselves. There's a fundraiser lunching March the 4th. You can get tickets at the Golden Spread off Jim Lake. There's a little plug, but it's so important with Boy Scouts because it just turns young kids into great adults with great manners and great knowing of the outdoors. Those are just a handful. I know there's a lot more. Discovery Center. I mean, come on. Yeah. They do such great work too. So yeah, there's so many out there that at times I'm like, I think I need to give away more cookies.
Okay, what's the most underrated aspect of living here?
I think the underrated aspect a lot is just how friendly people are. Now, we're having a lot of people that are coming in from the West Coast, and they're selling their property, luckily, getting out of harm's way now. My gosh, with all the California fires. And I'm not saying California in particular, but there's a lot of Californians that are moving here. They're just struck on how polite people are. And it's true. Back home in Fort Worth, no one really nods at you anymore or gives you the little hand sign driving by, or just the overall politeness in everyday world, at the grocery store or at the Walgreens or what have you. Here, I can strike up a conversation with just about anybody. And I've had that talent for my whole life. I speak more to elderly than I do my own age because we get along and we have you can just strike up a conversation with anybody. And the politeness aspects kind of throws off people that are not from here. Like, are we missing something? Why is everybody so nice?
Yeah, they're suspicious of it.
I hear that a lot, but it's like, hey, that's just who we are.
Okay, last question. When was the last time you visited the Big Texan?
Big Texan, wow. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving.
Okay.
I got the full order of calf fries. I got an extra cocktail sauce, and me and my wife shared one of the bigger steaks. I don't get the biggest steak because I walk out waddling. And then we're leaving, and my wife's like, hey, we need to go get one of those red velvet cakes. Well, if anybody knows, the red velvet, all the cakes there are like half the cake.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a large portion.
So we got a good square of chocolate and red velvet, and then we were miserable for the remainder of that next week. Now, having said that, I think it's on the calendar to go back because we go to Big Texan quite a bit. Okay. And when you go up to the counter and they ask everybody the same question, where are you from? It's like, oh, we're from here. Well, sometimes the girls up front they look at us kind of odd.
Surprises them a little bit.
Are you serious? You're from here and you're here? It's like, well, yeah, absolutely we are. We love it.
Okay, so that's the 8 straight questions. I like to close by asking my guests to endorse something. So what's one thing you would like listeners to know about or to experience?
If you're not from here, it's Palo Duro Canyon. It's such an incredible resource that we have. All the outdoor things that we have to do here is just astounding. And I had no idea really when I moved here because I was still coming off that motorcycle thing. And it's like, okay, I'm going to ride my chopper down the street. But I had no plans on getting on a path on the dirt and taking a walk, taking a hike. So as far as that, it's just like all the incredible things we can do outside and just the overall camaraderie of everybody else out there with you. It's just it's a good little secret little thing. If you don't know about Amarillo, it's just the people that you encounter in your everyday life, for the most part, are just incredible humans. Yeah, it's just it's such a special time. And with my kids growing up too, my granddaughter's 7, Jude, my youngest is 12. We're getting to experience this all over again. My first set of kids, and Nigel and Tabitha, we did a lot of things when they were growing up. So now we're getting a second round of it, and just all the things that are at our fingertips that we can do. it's just an incredible time.
Okay. Chris Griffin, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
I sure appreciate it. Thank you so much.
And that concludes the episode. I want to say thanks to Chris for the interview. Of course, you can learn more about Blue Crane at bluecranebakery66.com. Their products are amazing. Thanks to Lazy Boy of Amarillo and Panhandle Plains Historical Museum for supporting the podcast, and to Angelina Marie for editing every week. And thank you for listening. Hey Amarillo exists on a weekly basis because of listeners like you and the local people who support it financially through patreon.com/HeyAmarillo. Hey Amarillo's executive producers include Patrick Burns, Jason Burr, Katie Linger, Corey Burns, Josh Wood, Wes Reeves, Cindy Graham, and Barbara and Jim Whitten. This has been episode 389. My name is Jason Boyett, and I'll see you next week.